advising clients across the country. Here he is, your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome. This is Something More with Chris Boyd. I'm Chris Boyd, certified financial planner practitioner, and our office is Asset Management Resources. We're a registered investment advisor firm, and our show is a financial show. We call it Something More because we like to talk about all those important dollar and cents issues, but also those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Thanks for being with us. We love to have you participate in the show. And joining me to help throughout this show, we've got Jeff Perry, an advisor for Asset Management Resources. Jeff Perry, JD. Sorry, I got to give you your props there, Jeff.
So, if I have old friends, right? We all have old friends. When you say JD, they think that you're calling me by my nickname when I was younger. My nickname was JD.
Oh, because your middle initial is D.
D, and that was kind of like my sports nickname, JD.
How did I know that? Yeah, right.
It's like, why is he calling you that?
Yeah. Attorney at law,
right. I know that's, but whenever you say it, I hear two things.
Juris Doctorate, I guess, is what it is.
Yes.
Huh?
So depending on where you fall in my life, it means something different to you.
Yeah, very nice.
But if I'm around an old friend and you'll hear, and you're there, they'll say, "Hey, JD."
JD.
And they'll be like,
maybe we'll start using that.
You go right ahead. He might deal with the two Jeffs in the office.
Yeah, that could help with that. That's right. And we'll talk to Jeff Tamaning next week, I guess we decided.
Yeah.
But to give our listeners a chance to get a sense of our show, we've got lots to talk about, kind of flexible, but we've got multiple things going on throughout this week's radio program. We're going to be talking in the next hour with our really special guest. We're going to be talking with David Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States of America. David has been talking about the national debt for a couple of decades now.
Forever.
Yeah. And the problem only gets worse. So we'll have a chance to talk with him a little bit. And, the debt is on my mind, of course, because the debt ceiling issue continues to evolve and be a topic that Americans are paying attention to. What's going to happen in Washington? Excuse me.
Evolve is the right word, because it seems like every day there's a different headline about optimistic, pessimistic chaos.
Exactly. And I was saying off air, I think, I'd heard someone say this, and I thought this was really apt, that there's a real difference in the way Wall Street is thinking about this issue and the way I think Main Street is thinking about this issue. I think Main Street is concerned, that is, if there's a debt, they're focused on the severity, the significance of what could it mean, how it could really be essentially catastrophic for long-term implications for the U.S. economy, the U.S.'s ability to borrow money, the costs of that, support the way we do things. And I think Wall Street has kind of said, yawn, they'll figure it out. And just the implications for doing anything else are just too severe that it would be implausible that they wouldn't resolve this prior to air quotes default.
Absolutely. Well, if you've two different perspectives, if you're Wall Street and you're analyzing this and you remember the history that this goes back through every modern day president, more or less, and it always gets resolved one way or the other, last minute or compromise or whatever. I think it's not irrational to think, well, they're going to get it done again, so we're not going to make big decisions based upon this scary news. And if you're on Main Street and you're watching the nightly news or the rhetoric from both parties, it's easy to get twisted up and think this is going to happen this time. This is scary. Yeah. So I think both perspectives have merit, but I'm kind of getting
you have some perspective about it.
I certainly do. I think this is a show. So when I was first elected to the State House, and I know the State House isn't the Capitol, but I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of similarities in how business is conducted. I've met a number of congressmen and senators and at the federal level, and they share the same types of stories. I won't say his name. He's a member of the other party. He was in a very powerful position at the time I was elected in 2002, and he said, "Remember, Jeff, this is just a show. It's just a movie." And I didn't really know what he meant.
There's
But
political theater, huh?
right, there's a lot of business done, but most of when you see the speaker or the president at a podium or a press secretary, that's the show. I mean,
Yeah.
the work is being done behind the scenes and there's negotiations and all that, but we never get to see that. And so at the end of the day, both parties need to come out of this with something that they can claim as a win, a political win. And the fact that President Biden has rearranged his trip, meaning not going to Australia. He's out in Japan at the end of the week here, and he was going to go to Australia to come back because he would say the seriousness of the negotiations tells me he's coming back to claim victory, to have it done, to sign the success. I doubt he's going to make his trip shorter to come back to sit on a failed negotiation and be sitting at the table.
Good point. That's a
right?
really
So
yeah. So for those who don't know, the president is in Japan for the was it G7?
G7, yeah.
G7. So some talks with some of our biggest economic partners, and Japan being one of them, and talk about a variety of issues. But he's cutting his trip a little bit short to come back. And so, in any case, that's good insight, Jeff, and good point to the whole topic of political theater and that surrounds all this stuff.
The most interesting thing to me on that is I think the bill will pass, the debt raising the debt ceiling, and I think there's promises being made about the budget negotiations. But for the debt ceiling, it's going to be interesting who votes for it, because the hardcore conservatives that McCarthy is having some trouble with in his party probably won't vote for it. And
so you think it'll have to be sort of from the middle to the left?
Yes, I think they're going to just get they'll be counting votes and they'll pressure the people that they need to get to the majority number. But there's going to be the left and the right noises on, the extremes of the two parties are going to have the ability to say, I voted against that. So once again, it's just a movie.
On this topic, I mean, there's been some discussion about the 14th Amendment as a possible maneuver to, if there was a worry of default, does the president just say, well, the 14th Amendment, requires us to pay our bills.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Section 4, if people want to read it, of the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, and the 14th Amendment is really a post-Civil War era amendment, but it has context surrounding the issues of that day. But the idea that we're required to pay our bills, and therefore, they continue to maybe issue more debt to try to pay our bills.
Well, arguably,
that would create probably more problems, wouldn't it? That might actually instigate the worry that they're trying to avoid.
Well, arguably, the 14th Amendment would deem the debt ceiling, which is a statute, it's a law, unconstitutional, and that's what would be litigated, right? And this goes back. I mean, President Clinton wrote about it. President Obama talked about it. President Trump talked about it. Difference of opinions here and there. Unsettled. It's never been done, never been litigated. There's a 1935 case by the name of Perry. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
That doesn't talk about the debt ceiling. It didn't exist, but it did talk about the debts of the United States and the obligation to pay and what that meant. So arguably the president has the power, but I think your point is more important. What would it do to throw that issue into uncertainty that would be
Well,
litigated?
if it turned out that the Supreme Court ruled against the administration in that scenario, right? If they said no, financial issues are the purview of Congress, and not allowed, as an example. Well, then you'd have all these people who borrowed, who lent money to the U.S. government, but that would have to be like, what do you do then? Like, oh, sorry, that doesn't count. So you'd have like this scenario where are we in effect creating the problem we're trying to avoid? You know what I mean?
I certainly agree with that. I think even more dangerous is the uncertainty that in the interim, right? So if the president was to use that alleged tactic of the alleged power in the 14th Amendment to just say, Treasury, loan more money, print more money, whatever they do, right? That uncertainty between then and the lawsuit process would throw the markets in uncertainty, which they don't like,
Right.
and the full faith and credit of the United States because of the threat
Comes
of
in
the case.
question.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think if we had a decision, yes or no, you can do that, the United States would deal with that. But the uncertainty it would create in that period before it all got figured out, it would take, in my opinion, and not just mine, I've read a lot about this from legal scholars and et cetera. It would take decades to reestablish our economic certainty of the United States, the dollar, full faith and credit. So
the consequences of not getting a deal or not figuring this out are just too high, I think. So, let's hope that this gets resolved. And your instincts about the political theater are on point. So to start things off, I was thinking, even though we've been talking for 10 minutes already, but
this happens with us, yeah.
I was thinking before we dive into other topics, just maybe a little small talk a little bit. I was noticing things like graduation and prom season and things of that sort. I just thought, and of course, my daughter just came back from her junior semester abroad in Europe. And she's, before you know it, off to an internship as well. But I've been seeing in on social media lots of activity. I was thinking really more about the graduation season, and
it is an uplifting time of year. And it's spring, the sun is out more, the flowers are blooming, the air is warmer for you guys anyway. And but it is, you see the social media posts of young people graduating from high school, or even
colleges, and
we just went through, like, I'm going to this college. I'm going to this college next year for
they identify the school there. Yep.
So that's all. It's very encouraging.
I just came from a last weekend, went to a celebration of longtime friends. I known this young woman since she was a baby, and now I've graduated with a doctorate in physical therapy and all this. So it's like, wow, life is moving on. People are growing up and graduating, and it just it does kind of create that topic of, one, when you in the graduation season, there are all kinds of inspirational talks. My nephew just graduated with a master's degree last weekend. And just saw him, on live streaming, walk across the stage, all that.
That's fun.
So you get into this season of, it's inspiring to see these kinds of occasions, and the talks that come with them about the potential, the future, the opportunity. I don't know. I love to embrace that.
I completely agree with you. The hope, the opportunity. Yeah. It's just, for these graduates, the world is their oyster, as they say, right?
Right.
And it's so
fun. And of course, right now, the, unemployment situation there seems to be still a high demand for employment. So it's a good time. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I remember early in my career, it was like, every time I was looking for a job, it seemed like it was a recession. You know what I mean?
It is a great time, whether they want to, leave the area or they want to stay in the area. The unemployment rate is very low. Lots of opportunities, changing businesses. A lot of disruptors. There's a lot of opportunities for people to do meaningful work.
Yeah, and I think just as a reminder, in the midst of this, for our listeners who may have family members who are starting out on their career and graduating from with a degree and onto whatever their next big adventure may be. Jeff, I think that's a time to maybe point out our something more mentoring offering that we have on our website as a great resource and tool to help people get formative advice as they begin this adult life that they may now take on, and how to think about their financial security presently and in the future.
Gee, how many people who are listening wish that when they graduated from whatever they graduated, when they entered the workforce, that they had the opportunity to have some education and guidance? How many people do we come across that say, no one in my house talked about money, and certainly don't get it?
Financial education is not a part of the mainstream. I think, it's not part of our curriculum in school, really.
No.
So, it's something that can really be something you have to seek out on your own. I know that's been sort of your story. You've talked about in the past how
I have, yeah.
You've had a personal, passion around personal finance that you really love to absorb that information and
I do, and I
and
love
Lisa have really embraced it together.
Absolutely. If people want to check out what we're talking about, it's Something More Mentoring. It's a service that we offer. It's on our website, amrfinancial.com. Go over to the services tab, and at the bottom, you'll see Something More Mentoring. Go to that page and you'll hear all about it. There's a video from you about it as well, Chris, on how you see the program. And at the bottom of the page, if you want a taste of what it is or a preview, there's a number of videos. I think we have 9 published so far on different subjects of the mentoring program. So you're free to take a look at those, watch it.
And more to come, right?
And more to come, yep. And if you do watch the videos, watch them in order.
Yeah.
It's a process
to jump to the one you want to pay attention to, but
it would be it's a great thing for someone. It's a great thing for a lot of people. It's a great thing for people who find themselves in chaos or need some guidance because they think their financial life is a mess. It's a great program for people who just want to learn more. But you make a good point. If someone's just graduating, getting into the workforce, and probably is apt to make some big financial mistakes, like they get a job, so they buy a new car on a
big expensive car. Yeah, exactly.
On a 10-year
thing
loan,
a lot of people
10%,
do,
right?
Yeah.
So
charge up the credit card.
If you think it might be right for one of those young graduates, it might be a nice opportunity to give it to them for a gift, if that's what you're thinking. So check it out.
So this is available just on the one hand with, we put it out there if you want to just see the informational part of it. But the best part about it is if someone's looking for counsel along the way, we spend a lot of one-on-one time with people. There is a cost for that, but it's pretty reasonable. And it'd be worthwhile for people to entertain just getting the guidance and mentorship throughout that process.
Yeah, we basically hold their hand for 13 months, provide them some education, some mentoring, so that over that year plus, they're creating a financial plan and strategies to have a secure financial life. And at the end of the 13 months, they should be ready to be out there on their own. That's the premise.
Excellent. Jeff, let's switch gears, JD, let's switch gears. Okay. I'm just teasing now.
No, go ahead.
Let's switch gears to an article you pointed out that really is a pretty significant development that Congress is entertaining. And sounds like it's getting traction. Maybe tell us a little bit about it and we can hash it around.
So in the context of Social Security reform, we hear a lot about Social Security reform, and I'd like you to remind people that we have a Social Security seminar coming up at the end of this. But
yes,
in the context of Social Security reform, one of the things that uniquely affects government employees, meaning employees of the federal government and or the state governments who during the time they were employed by the government did not pay into Social Security because they were paying into the government pension system. What happens when they retire, and I'd like to have a lots of disclosure. This includes me, by the way. I had 26
Yeah.
years in public service, so I'm not collecting Social Security yet. But when I do, unless something changes, my Social Security will be diminished because of my service in
So-called double
government.
dipping, so to speak.
That's right. The idea when they passed the Windfall Elimination Provision, is we call it WEP, was to make sure that people didn't collect both on the government pension and Social Security. And I guess if you had a whole career, meaning your whole professional career was in government, you never contributed to Social Security, that's fair, right? You shouldn't get something for something that you didn't contribute. That
Right.
makes sense to me.
Sure.
What the issue is, are those individuals like myself and like more and more people, because not too many people stay in one place forever.
Right.
But for those people who have a government pension because they qualified, in my case, 26 years, and they also have qualified under the definition of qualifying for Social Security.
Yep. 40 quarters of participation in the process.
That's right. So those individuals who have a combined public and private service career, if you will, are penalized, whether or not fair or not, in their Social Security, where their Social Security would be reduced. And there's a formula. If you have 30 years of private sector service, meaning paying into Social Security, your reduction is eliminated. And if you have less than 18, it's the largest, and anywhere between 18 and 30, it's a formula. A little bit complicated, but you get the idea.
Yeah, you explained that very well. That makes sense. Yeah.
So there's been an effort for, I don't know about decades, but at least a decade, to repeal the Windfall Elimination Provision and allow people who have qualified for Social Security to get what they deserve. Not more than they deserve, but not less than they deserve. It almost passed in the last session. It got out of committee, but it never got to the floor. And so there's a lot of support for it. Back to the opening of the show, Chris, you wonder if it's a show, meaning
right,
congressmen saying yes to their constituents,
giving it lip service, yeah,
and then signing on to the bill, and then not pushing it. I mean, nothing gets done unless people are actually working.
Well, I do think the reality is, right now we have a Social Security system that is in jeopardy, right? Not to say that it won't pay some benefits, but there's not sufficient money coming in to pay benefits in full in about a decade?
Right. Yes.
And so if
9 years, right?
If you then say, well, you guys get more, that's going to exacerbate that problem even sooner, right? And so
that's legitimate.
Yeah, it's just how are they going to solve this if they got to take on, I think it's a reasonable thing to address, but I think you've got to also start tackling the reality that we need to solve the problem of Social Security not having sufficient resources to make its obligations, so to speak.
Yep, there's a lot of pieces of Social Security that maybe it's a good topic
and the same can be said for
but
Medicare as well. That the resources to make good on that as well are also dwindling.
Absolutely. So in the context of that, there's House Bill 82, which would repeal the Windfall Elimination Provision and the government offset provision, which has to do with spousal benefits that we won't get into right now. But a majority of the House members, 232, including 165 and 67 Democrats, have signed on as co-sponsors to this bill.
Wow, that's quite a bit of support.
It's right, but is it support that is just
it
I'll put my name
support.
on it?
Yeah.
So my constituents think I'm supporting it, but I realize we can't do this, right? There's the show, and then there's the actual work. But I think this comes up as you kind of alluded to, in the context of our larger Social Security reform effort, which is going to have to happen in the years to come.
Yeah.
And they'll decide what's fair on this, how much it costs, and there's lots of provisions. What's the right retirement age? What's the right tax rate? Should people who make a lot of money pay Social Security on all of it? I mean, there's a cap right now, and
Yeah.
there's a lot
or
of
more, even if it's not all, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
There's fraud
That's
issues
one. There's
with
a lot of support for that idea. Of course, probably more from people who don't have the cap than people who do have the cap, right?
probably, yeah, I think that's fair.
But in any case, I mean, I think, and so if you have put more contribution in, it likely would raise your benefits. There's also talk of things like means testing. If you have a higher income, does that have some consequence on how much you get taxed, or how you
Right.
how much your benefits should be impacted in any way? These are all things that don't presently factor in. The age of benefits, people of eligibility for full retirement. People are living longer than they used to when Social Security started. The idea was originally that people would be on Social Security for a very limited time. Now the life expectancy is 20 plus years, I think, that beyond that's full retirement age. So, do you scale that up? That's somewhat unfair to people who are more physical labor than people who are more, thought labor or whatever it might be. I don't know the right way to phrase that, but you end up with, again, there's all these issues of disparity and challenge and how to deal with it. And fair, what's fair?
What's fair? That's the word, right? And wherever you are on the political spectrum, I mean, no one's going to like Social Security reform if it's balanced, because it very well
there's going to be stuff everybody hates, but there'd be something that everybody gets.
The ages might go up, the taxes might go up.
I think that's the reality, don't you? You're going to have some of these, some of all these things. That's the only way you get a compromise to give everybody something on their end, but ultimately get to a result that you can solve the problem, essentially.
I also think they have to deal with some fraud issues that are well documented on SSDI and Medicare. We see the stories on the news, and that has to be addressed. And things like the WEP and other things that they may be small to the whole big picture. I'm not saying WEP is, but other things and other injustices. I think it'll be a comprehensive Social Security reform bill that hopefully makes things fair.
Well, that seems like that's more likely years away than as compared to the way this support for the WEP revision sounds.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic about this bill just because
Actually
it has sponsors. Right. I think the same thing. It came close last session, as I said, but I'm not optimistic.
Well, if you're on someone who's saying, how do I learn more about, like, I have worked in the private sector, I've worked in the public sector. How does this work for me? You might be a great candidate to attend our upcoming seminar. We have a seminar on June 6th, and this is intended for people who are, approaching their retirement age range. So Social Security, you can start it as soon as 62, sometimes 60, but generally 62. And then 65 is when we historically think about retirement when it comes to Medicare.
Right.
When it comes to full retirement age, it's getting closer. It's not quite 67, but as people age, that gets closer to 67. And the maximum benefits is at age 70. So all of these are things to be kind of understanding. If you're in a position where you could really benefit from understanding more about how does Social Security work? How will my benefits work? When should I turn it on? I've been through a divorce. Do I get spousal benefits? I'm a widow. How does that work? You get the point. All these possibilities of different scenarios, different circumstances. You might benefit from attending this. It's on June 6th at 9 a.m. Plan for about 2 hours. I know that's during the workday, so plan ahead. But this could really be valuable for you in starting to think about your planning for retirement. We have two great guest speakers. One is on the topic of Medicare, Susan Flanagan from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We've got Marcia Mantell to be a guest speaker on the topic of Social Security. both really great experts in their field. And you'll learn a lot. It's educational in format. There's not really any kind of a sales event. This is really just to give you information. We certainly will offer our services for a financial plan should you want to come in and talk to us, but it is entirely optional and is intended to be a great resource for both clients and listeners to be taking advantage of these great speakers. So join us on June 6th. You can register through our website, amrfinancial.com. Last week, we had a listener who registered through our texting. You can send us a text at 508-915-3700. A great way to register. Just mention the seminar. Give us your contact, how to reach you. If you're bringing a guest, if it's just you or a guest, we want to have a head count. We have room, but we have limited room. So we want to make sure we have enough spaces. And of course, you could always call us toll free. 866-771-8901 is our number. All right. Did I miss anything, Jeff, on that?
No, it's there's so many different scenarios. It's Social Security and Medicare. I think people think they know. But when you dig into the options, and we had a radio show on it a few weeks ago, and the call is just
right.
The situations in the call exemplified how easy it is to make a wrong decision. A bad decision or no decision can really cost you as well.
Yeah, good point. And you got to pay attention, and this could be a good first step.
You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd, Financial Talk Show.
Asset Management Resources, LLC, and J. Christopher Boyd, CFP, provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is in the nature of general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. AMR, LLC cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.